force behind any economy. The Public Service Union presents PSU Speaks, an interactive, informative, bi-weekly program discussing matters affecting the working class. Tune in to Nice Radio on 90.3, 96.7, and 101.3 every second and fourth Monday, 8 to 10 p.m. PSU Speaks. Don't you miss it.
But nowadays it's really very hard to get a job as a girl in Trinidad. You're looking out to find something to do. You meet a boss man who promised to help you, but when the man laid down the condition, nothing else but humiliation. You want to see your whole anatomy. You want to see where your doctor never see. You want to do where your husband never do. Still you will know if these scams will hire you. But if it's all this humiliation, to get a job these days as a woman, whether they go keep their money, I go keep my honey and die with my dignity. Of the cash and position, waiting to abuse and exploit any man. But then you walk in at the quarter bed with you. Become slave, second wife and deputy. And as the next woman come on the line, he start to tell you you ain't good, you can't wine. They want to see you with some fancy clothes. They want to see how you look without your clothes. They want you fuck up like a bloody acrobat. The wife at home they can't, she can do that. So before I have to lick down somebody, let the police come for me. Tell them they could keep their money, I go keep my honey and die with my dignity. Looking for what you might bounce up a fellow who might be looking quite handsome and macho. You tell yourself you want to walk with me, so you decide to try a ratchet free. But when you're done, it's then you get to know the wife leave me and gone long time ago. With all the cash he have, he is a failure. The man is nothing but a blinking suya. They want to feel up your navel and your breast. They want to see if you are loader on your chest. The things they want to do you with their hand, like if you're searching to find the promised land. I am a woman who don't make any style. Before I stop them and they die of heart attack. Tell them they could keep their money, I will keep my money and die with my dignity. And you really need it bad. A man decides to help you, must be glad. But if you value yourself as a woman, you will demand respect from the vagabond. Stand up to them and let them know the truth. It's what you want, you will not blinking prostitute. You have a hole on your back, they want to see. They want to see if you are man from your belly. They want to know how much man you had before, and if you're strong enough to take any more. I have a pride and I have ambition. I want to hold my head up high as a woman. brother, they go keep their money. I go keep my honey and die with my dignity.
Good evening, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and all our listeners in the diaspora. My name is Desrita, your moderator this evening. Welcome to another PSU Speaks, an informative program geared to empower all workers in our blessed land. A special welcome is extended to our members and all workers throughout St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Tonight, we have a panelist of very passionate women. And in studio with me, I have our own General Secretary, Sister Alexander Alexander Ross, who is no stranger to the program. And I have also joining us virtually a sister, very passionate as well, from our Bermuda Public Service Union, our Women's Chair, Sister Anastasia Wickham Caesar, and we have Felicia Alexander, the president of Red Root. I would now ask our ladies to introduce themselves as we start off our program.
So good night, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. As was mentioned, I am no stranger, but I am always happy to be here. Happy that we can discuss issues affecting our women, in particular tonight, that topic. And I am hoping that the members will be able to partake in this conversation. So wherever you are listening from, whether it's in St. Vincent or in the diaspora, welcome. Thank you for joining us, and I look forward to a very interactive and a very educational program. Thank you.
Okay, sister, we'll go with our own women's chair.
Good night to everybody. Anastasia Wickham Caesar. I'm the woman's chair of the Women Public Service Union of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I'm happy to be here and in discussion of this very important topic, the impact of violence on our women and girls. It's a pleasure to be on this platform with Sister Linda and Sister Felicia, Sister Ross and Sister Desirita. Thank you for having me tonight as we go forward. I hope it will be an impactful program, and I hope many are listening and can learn what we are aspiring to do here tonight. Thank you.
Okay, I would just give a brief intro, a brief bio to our other two panelists tonight. They have extensive bios. I can't read everything, it's too much information. So, first of all, I would like to introduce Felicia Alexander Lavier. She is a social advocate, feminist leader, an entrepreneur, overcoming adversary as a teenage mother. She returned to school and dedicated her life to serving marginalized communities. She is the founder and executive director of a leading women and children's rights organization, Red Root SVG Inc., and has over a decade of experience in roles such as guidance counseling, prison teaching, and communication. So let us welcome Sister Felicia, and any other information she wants to add, then feel free to do that.
Good night to everyone listening. Thank you. You've said it. I'm very happy to be here and hope that I can share knowledge and also learn.
Okay, Sister Alexander. We have two Alexander. Okay. Our next sister comes from our blessed sister island Bermuda, Sister Linda. Yes, no stranger to the topic. And yes, she is a proud Bermudian. dedicated 25 years of service as well to her union. And she also have 18 years where she has skills in negotiations, grievance resolutions, shop steward training, and labor relations, passionately advocating for workers' rights. She has over 50 presentations on bullying and harassment across bargaining units, showcasing her deep commitment to eradicating these issues from the workplace. Her expertise is backed by extensive training from the International Labour Organization and Public Services International, organizations at the forefront of combating workplace bullying and harassment. Sister Linda, anything else you want to add to that information I know
You,
shared?
you, good evening to you, comrade. Sometimes when you hear your bio read, you sit back and you wonder who they're talking about because you just do what you have to do. You just carry on the business of advocating, particularly for women in the workplace who are experiencing any form of bullying and harassment and violence. And so I'm excited to be here this evening. I'm looking forward to an informative and a very thought-provoking conversation, because I truly believe that we are at this stage where we really have to have frank conversation on this. The time has passed for us to skirt around this issue, and we have to have frank conversation.
Okay, thank you, Sister Linda. Unfortunately, we were supposed to have another sister with us tonight, Samantha Robertson, but unfortunately, she fell ill. However, ladies, I will now open us with a scripture reading, and it is taken from Isaiah 60, verse 18, and it says, "No longer will violence be heard in your land, nor ruin or destruction within your borders. But you will call your walls salvation and your gates praise." So this scripture speaks to what we would like to see come to fruition all over the world. And our discussion tonight, as we commemorate November 25th, the recognized International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women and Girls, and from a broader perspective, all forms of gender-based violence. The topic chosen for tonight's discussion is the impacts of violence on women and girls. Although this topic may sound like a very simple topic, the depth at which it impacts our women and girls is indeed terrifying. According to the UN Women, it has 736 million women who have been subjected to some form of violence, and that represents 30% of women aged 15 and older. And this figure that we are quoting here does not even include sexual harassment. And sometimes when this day comes along, you would hear the men asking, why only the women? Why not the men? But the men need to realize that the women are the marginalized group, women and girls. And also, by reason, violence against women is more prevalent than violence against men. And it's due to gender inequality, which is characterized by unequal power and control between men and women, and also because, as I said, we are looked upon as the marginalized group. So I'm going to bring the discussion of violence close to home, looking at what I call the St. Vincent situation, right? But before that, I want to welcome Sister Alexander Ross as our public health nurse, representing the public health nurse here. What is her thoughts in respect of violence against women and girls and how it is being viewed in St. Vincent? Are we just barely looking at it at the surface, or are we really looking at it in depthly enough as we should? From a nurse, a health perspective, that is.
Well, Sister Desrita, I don't think we in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, even though regionally and globally violence has been added to the list in terms of public health concerns, I don't think we in St. Vincent and Grenadines realize the magnitude and how violence against women or violence on a whole affect you as an individual. And even though we hear the stats, I can't say we are even taking it seriously, because you hear the stats and it's not just one person that is affected. Yeah, well, one person in terms of what the person that is experiencing the violence, whether physically or emotionally or whatever it is. But that person is attached to a family, and that person is attached to a job, and that person is a mother, a wife, and so forth. So when they are affected, is a whole heap of people affected. Because if you and so that is how we have to look at a public health situation. It's no longer a one individual that is affected. So you can say, oh, it's just one person. This one person have links to other persons, and if that one person is not functioning, can't concentrate, can't work, can't go about their daily life, how is it going to impact the other part of the family or the other part of the community? And that is why WHO and those other organizations saw it fit to add violence on a whole to the list of public health concern, because even if in the team where it says every 10 minutes, so the fact that we've been sitting here for what, 10-15 minutes, if as the team say, okay, one woman or two women would have died as a result of violence, that is significant to note. So how we should look at it from a public health standpoint, not so much because it's not a disease per se, as some people may have it as an ailment like diabetes or hypertension, but it's just as important because the individual is affected, and we're not looking at that individual in isolation. We're looking at that individual who's attached to other members and is an active member of the community. So if this is one or two women are affected and they can't function, what is going to happen? And then you think about all these women that are affected all around from whatever forms of violence. And violence, it creates or aggravates those physical conditions. So you might be hypertensive, diabetic, or asthmatic, or whatever, and then it's going to aggravate that. So it is a whole scale of things, like a domino effect that happens one after the other. And then because of that, we have to look at it more in depth. We have to pay more attention to it. That, okay, women are vulnerable, they are affected. What can happen as a result of them being affected? And so then we have to look at it from a public health eye or standpoint.
And what you just said, it makes a lot of sense, because even when we look on the job and we have all these women and everybody have their own little secrets and their own little form of violence that they are dealing with, and the way it affects you on the job and the way you operate with your family, the way you socialize, and that it's a spin-off in all areas of society, as you just stated, right? But I know I jumped the gun a little bit, because we would have listeners who are there hearing we speak about November 25th and International Day for the Elimination of Violence of Women and Girls. But probably we need to give them a little background as to what the day is all about and so forth, for them to have like a true understanding of why we are here tonight. So I would ask our women's chair to just give us an overview of what this day entails, and a little background for our listeners to really appreciate the reason why we are here tonight to have this discussion.
Okay, good night again. So the International Day for the elimination of violence against women is observed annually on November 25th. This day was officially designated by the United Nations General Assembly in 2000 through Resolution 54 of 134, which invites governments, international organizations, and NGOs to organize activities aimed at raising public awareness about violence against women and girls. The date was chosen to honor the Marabal sisters, three political activists from the Dominican Republic who were murdered in 1960 for opposing the dictatorship of Rafael Trujillo since 1981. Women's rights activists have recognized this day as a time to combat gender based violence. The day serves to highlight the pervasive nature of violence against women and girls, which remains a significant human rights violation globally. It takes the beginning of the 16 days of activism against gender based violence, concluding on December 10th, which is Human Rights Day. During this period, various campaigns and events take place worldwide to promote awareness and action against gender based violence. Each year, the Unite campaign focuses on a specific theme related to ending violence against women. For instance, the 2023 theme is Unite, Invest to Prevent Violence Against Women and Girls, No Excuse, emphasizing the need for increased investment in prevention efforts. The campaign encourages individuals to wear orange as a symbol of hope and a future free from violence. The International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women is a crucial observance aimed at mobilizing global action to end violence against women and girls. It underscores the ongoing challenges faced by women worldwide and promotes collective efforts towards achieving gender equality and safety for all.
Okay, thank you for that overview, Sister Stacy. Um, Sister Felicia, could you give us, do you believe that we in St. Vincent and the Grenadines are we really embracing this day and we recognize the importance of it? And are we really pushing, as organizations, non-profit organizations, are we seeing the reaction that we would really love to see among our women in respect of this particular day? What is your take on that?
Well, I don't think that we value the day enough and we are educating people enough because before I got into activism, I was not even aware of 16 days of activism or what it really meant. But to truly understand violence, I think um, we need to be educated around it. A lot of people don't even realize that they're going through violence, that things are happening to them that shouldn't be happening to them, and which lead to a lot of different issues. So it need to start from in the schools, educating our children because they're the next generation. Yeah, we are definitely not educated around um GBV and 16 days of activism. The
Okay, and
importance of
it's
it.
and as you rightfully
Yeah.
said, the education and the awareness. I am not sure if every year for the past couple of years, I could say over 5 years, I know the union has been um, trying to get our women within the well, not only in the public service, our women to recognize that day. And every time, every year, every November 25th, it comes around and everybody's still asking, what is this day again for? Where the orange for again? So it's not sticking, and I'm not sure why. I don't know Um, if we need to probably, as somebody stated before in a program before, we should not just wait until the month comes to start our advocacy, right? It has to be a continuous build up to that particular day. I believe that we might have to actually work hand in hand, and throughout the year, we start pulling our resources together and trying to do something bigger. I mean, we tried last minute to come up with things, but I think we need to at least every year, all of these organizations, nonprofits and other organizations, um, women organization that is, should come together and put off one big event that would really bring attention nationwide to the issue. Um, I'm gonna move away from St. Vincent a bit, but we would come back. I have to let our sister from Bermuda share the Bermudian experience. I am not sure if they are experiencing the same kind of, I don't know if to say, reluctance by women to get involved, but to get a perspective from another island to see where they stand in respect of the advocacy and so forth would be a nice touch to the discussion. Sister Linda, are you there with us? I'm not seeing you. Your video is not on anymore. So I'm not sure if Sister Linda is with us or she. Okay, you might have to try and see. We probably need to reconnect. Okay, Sister Felicia, go ahead. You were gonna say something else.
She left.
I was saying
Mhm.
that we need to
Are there
not
now?
just have one big event, but like maybe school visits regularly, during like maybe health and family life session or something. And it should be a continuous thing because children grow up, they get out of school, so
Yeah. Okay.
that's
So,
where we need.
yeah, thank you, Sister Felicia. Sister Linda, I was calling you out. You were
Yeah,
asking.
yeah, no, I was here. I was here. I don't know. I seem to be
Okay.
getting kicked off.
Okay.
Um,
Our technician did something, I
yeah,
believe. So you're back with us.
exactly. He had me waiting in the waiting room.
Oh boy.
But nonetheless, I am here. This
Okay.
this crisis in violence against women is global. Bermuda is experiencing the same amount of violence as a country against women and girls as anywhere else. And our issues around it are exactly the same. It is wrapped in secrecy, it is wrapped in pride, it is wrapped in shame, all of those sorts of things. We have issues of not only the baggage of violence that women carry into the workplace, but coming in toxic workplaces that are further victimizing them. And so we have these same issues. And to be frank, and listen, you brought me on here because you know I keep it real, right?
Mhm.
I cannot accept that there isn't enough education. We live violence. We live violence in our family. I can't find one single woman that has not been exposed to some type of violence against girls or themselves not victims that
True.
they're in denial about. I think what we need more is we need to help people to understand and take ownership that what is happening to them is violence. It's almost as if we become numb so that the things that people say to us, the way that people treat us, we no longer see it as violence. We just say, well, that's just how they are.
Right.
And because of that responses, it's passing down from generation to generation to generation. We have so much um information about violence out there on the internet, in the schools, on our websites, on your websites. But here's what we don't do: we don't talk about it in our everyday. Because I don't know about St. Vincent, but we've developed this thing like, well, that's not my business. I don't want to get involved in their business. I want to stay out of other people's business. But somebody mentioned it earlier. Other people's business is all of our business because it affects Everybody, from the children to the co-workers to societies that we're creating. And we as women have to have those real conversation amongst ourselves more often, not just on the 25th.
That is
We
true.
gotta have this conversation at our girls' nights, our girls' trips. But more importantly, and I call for this radical change today at another roundtable that I attended. We need to change the messengers of the message that violence and harassment against women and girls is wrong by getting men to call out their fellow man.
Wow, that is so true.
I would like to share an experience that I had recently. As in Friday, the PSU, we collaborated with Sister Felicia's organization, the Redwood Foundation, in a march and rally. It wasn't well attended, and the same things that you are saying in terms of person still asking, what is this all about? Why you all are doing it? And one of the things that it kind of affected me, and I was really upset because a young lady from the from a department that is dealing with gender, she was like, what is this all about? Women is women's biggest enemy.
Enemy. That's the thing that always coming
And
through at you.
yeah, and that it really affected me because I'm saying you are coming from, and I really couldn't speak with her because I really got upset because you are coming from a place of gender. We are trying to do this, and you're saying, why are we doing this? We're trying to
She,
raise
she don't
awareness.
she don't
We're
understand. So I would have tried to educate her. She doesn't understand.
I think she understands. She
Yeah,
I
that
don't
just
she
think it's that
is working in the
she doesn't
ministry that is
understand.
responsible
I
for
don't
that.
think
No, because
I'm
if she's asking about what is this and saying that woman is woman biggest enemy, she definitely don't understand. Um, because most of the time, situations that we find ourselves in where women rival against each other is because of the opposite sex, and sometimes we don't even see that that is the problem. If we learn to unite
the
more
only
and
thing
understand
too I would
more,
say she was trying to say too is that okay, sometimes you try to help the women and they go back into the situation. It doesn't I keep
it's
saying it doesn't matter
it's normal.
how much you try and help and they go
Yeah.
back.
but,
It is
but
our
sister,
job to try
people
and
go back because they don't have another option.
That is
I
true.
guess people go back. They say they'll go back to the vomit because the powers that be don't see the need to put a lot of things in place. So people leave. Yes, they want to leave, but leave to go where? That is the
So
other thing. And then
I,
they go back, because they don't have
that's
they feel like they don't
that's
have a
a great
choice.
point. That's a great point. And one of the things that we notice is that women are dependent on men, which is why we try to empower them through skills training,
empower.
job
Yes.
development, something so that there would be a less chance of them returning, do counseling. And some of these women don't have self-esteem. They think that they always have to be with a man. So
So they
it's
socialize.
Well,
it's a lot of
well,
different thing. What when they go to the government departments, women need a whole rounded sort of support. It's just that you can't just put them in a safe home because they need skills training, counseling, different support. So if you think that you taking them from the man and just hold them there for a while, after they're gonna just return or whatever, because they have so much other issues going on with them.
Okay,
and I
thank
think it's
you.
important to understand the psychological impact of violence, right? So violence can also be in the form of financial violence, where you deliberately take away a person's purchasing power to keep them in situations, right? And then on top of that, the psychological aspect of violence. Persons understand that the physicality of violence is wrong. Nobody, no, you don't have to explain it to anybody that being hit and hurt is wrong. But the psychological aspect, when it's coming from someone that you believe in your version of love, loves you, just taking them out of that situation doesn't change that, because there are times when that those perpetrators are nice, they're providers, they give you the latest, the greatest, they take care of your kids, they
Yes.
put a roof over your head. And then there are parts of them that are violent. And what perpetrators do is they have done such a great job of convincing victims
Others.
that it's their fault,
It's
that
their
we
fault.
got here because of
Yeah.
something you did, right?
You made
And when
me do
you
this.
look at it, it's no different from what happens in some workplaces, right? You come into workplaces, and when workplaces are failing, it's not management's fault, it's somehow something the workers did.
Yeah.
So that mindset is perpetuated in society. So no, we're not going to be able to just snatch people out of situations and say, hey, understand a different way. We have to constantly be changing the narrative on how we talk about things and how we address things. And be brave enough to say, listen, I I've been a victim of violence in spaces where I thought, hey, I'm a strong person. But when you mix emotional attachment, you start to one say, well, maybe it was something that I did. Or maybe if I do this better, because this person surely loves me. They tell me that all the time. It starts with, even in the workplace, building confidence and self confidence. If that is not an underlying part of your being, then of course it's easy for you to fall into these things. And that's what perpetrators do. They don't come along and say, hey, I am going to break down your confidence to get to the point where I'm going to manipulate and abuse you and terrorize you and financially starve you. And then I'm going to do all that while telling you I love you. They don't come like that. They start out differently. And the same with persons that are bullying and harassing people in the workplace. They don't come into the workplace and say, I'm going to be the worst boss ever. They make you feel like you turned them this way.
Yeah.
And that's why the narrative that we talk on a regular basis is important. Narrative and messaging is important. I don't blame victims, because victims are not the problem. The perpetrators are the problem. And perpetrators take advantage of systems that they created. People say, well, go to the police. Who created the police system? You
Right.
have abusers in the police system. You have abusers in the legal system. You have abusers in all organizations, if we're going to be real, right?
Sure.
And sometimes these abusers have done good things to the community. So, for the community, so who are going to call them out?
Precisely. And I realized that my next topic of discussion, we already started it. I was actually going to look at the different types of violence. And surprisingly, when I was doing my research, it had some new types that I were not even, well, probably because I didn't look outside of the box. I wasn't recognizing that these could be forms of violence. And in addition to the physical, the psychological, the mental, the financial, I saw they have here, they put in stalking as a form of violence. And now we have now more online social media um, platforms that they actually have online violence. And this one is kind of strange, horror killing. And that one involves the killing of women and girls by a family member. I never saw that one before. So when we look at the different types of violence and how it impacts women and girls. And I know when we started off the discussion, Sister Shellyan went into the public health aspect of it and see the spill off into the wider society, right? But we ourselves, as Sister Linda indicated, we are exposed, or we are ourselves persons who have experienced, if not some form of violence. We have family members, we have co-workers, we have girlfriend, boyfriends who have indicated to us that they have indeed experienced some kind of violence. So the education aspect of it, I guess the awareness is there, but sometimes I believe, as Sister Linda stated also, until it it affects you to this extent that you see that I need that kind of protection and I need that kind of advocacy and bringing awareness. We sit in a corner and we disregard what is happening around us. So we could probably look at how would the different forms of violence actually impact our women and girls. We already discussed like the psychological, the control, that aspect of it. But in terms of the social media aspect of it, how do we see that really impacting our women and girls? Um, the way how, okay, we have more of our young women, our teenagers actually, they find themselves finding acceptance on this platform when they can't find it in the normal setting of socializing. And some get lured into different things, and you find some of them get so caught up and even ends up in suicides and all of these things. So how do we see social media being a form of violence upon our women and girls? Just share your views on that aspect. And what can we do as trade unionists, as advocates? What can we do? How do we see ourselves addressing that issue? Anybody speak to?
Well,
Yeah.
well, it all goes back to acceptance and how people feel about themselves. Now, when we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs in terms of when you're gonna get self-actualized, I don't think anybody ever gets there because people are always looking for something else to do. But if we look at that in terms of your needs, where you go from physical and you go on to your psychological and so forth, to get to the place that where you should be. And a lot of the times, persons lacking that kind of acceptance and sense of belonging in the home, and that is why the family would always be the fundamental building block in terms of what happens to children and when you become an adult, the type of adult you will be. So you find these young, well, some males do it as well, but more female. They look out there for a sense of belonging, and what the media says I am, then that's what I am. If they say that I'm beautiful, then I'm beautiful. If they say that I'm ugly, I'm ugly. And if you don't get that sense of acceptance on those social media platforms that you're looking, you think that okay, this is the way that I am going to be loved, or somebody's going to tell me. Then if they don't get that, then you find it backfires, and then it affects them, and they're all depressed, and they, as you said, well, that is the extreme in terms of suicide and so forth. So the society has pushed us into this corner because they have defined what beautiful look like. You have to be this physique and all of that. They have defined everything. So if you don't fit into those brackets, if you don't excel academically and all of that, then it means that you're no good and you're not worth anything. And people look for whatever is going to give them the good news or tell them something that they want to hear. If they say a drowning man is gonna grab at a straw, the straw really can't save him. But you grab at something that you think is going to satisfy whatever need you have at the time. And that is why it's important for us to go back to the foundation of family and go back to the foundation of teaching our girls in primary school and secondary school how to respect themselves, how to behave, how to this and how to that. So when they grow up, there's not this void that they would want to fill. And then they would be looking to all of these social media platforms where you have a lot of the predators. So we have to fix it. And it can't start, it has to start at the building block, which is the family, and how we as a society, as a government, as non-profit organization or civil society, how we all work together to see how we can fix it.
I
Lady?
I agree with you to some extent, sister, but I am not a supporter of teaching girls to be better and behave themselves. We have to teach young men to stop being predators.
Well, you teach both
We,
of
we,
them.
we have to
Yes.
we can't teach girls no more. Soon as girls are born, from the time that they're small, we teach them every single thing about how to act. But we're not teaching young men to
I agree
stop
with
being
you. I agree with
predatory.
you.
That
I
is
agree
true.
with you.
That is true. That is true.
Okay? And as unionists, as unions, we have to be more actively involved in the digital policies of employers. Because right now in the workplace, one of the methods used to bully people is WhatsApp groups.
Yes.
Workplace WhatsApp groups that are ungoverned. No policies around these WhatsApp groups. No policies around digital and social media unless it benefits the employer.
which
And
is
unions need to be actively involved in the creation of these policies and how they operate. Because you could get bullied on a WhatsApp and the employer say, oh, well, was nothing to do with us. We didn't create that.
it was
But
put on.
if that WhatsApp was created because of the workplace, then it should be governed by the disciplinary and the bullying and harassment policies of the workplace. And so I think this is where we have lost time by being involved in digital policies that are just being forced on the workers because now everything's about digital and technology. But where was the proper consultation? Where was the union's intervention? Because the persons that suffer most from the harassment and the violence of technology is women.
Yep.
It's women. And we have not had proper intervention in it. And so we advocate for our union when we go to the table, when we talk about negotiations, when we have our consultations, our JCC, we say, bring those policies to us and let us see if those policies don't have loopholes and those policies don't have ways in which you can further victimize victims.
Okay, Sister Felicia, anything to add in respect of social media platforms and how they are being used as a form of violence? Now, Sister Stacy, if you have anything, you could go ahead as well.
I think my sister said it covered it all. Must reiterate that uh, social media is a very dangerous place. Um, and everybody now lives on it every day. Before we even eat, the first thing we do is pick up our devices. Um, and it has become addictive. Um, One of the things that I wanted to talk about is mental health. Um, how social media bullying also, I mean, and other different forms of violence affects your mental health, and we are not speaking about our mental health enough, and we still have this taboo around it, calling people crazy or whatever. But if you look at where it stemmed from, violence situation within the homes and so forth. So I think we need to bring more awareness around mental illness and the different types of violence can also
Okay.
lead to mental illness.
That is so true. Um, Sister Stacy, anything to add in respect of the social media aspect?
I just wanted to add sometimes what's one person sometimes accept may not be what somebody else accept.
Mm-hmm.
And that I think that's a problem because some people because I might not have a problem with something you do. Somebody else would, but they will not say the perpetrator may not figure that is an issue.
That's an issue.
So they continue to do it even though someone else might be upset with it. And how do we really deal with these persons?
Hmm. Now you mentioned that, I want to say one thing. I have had several conversations with men. Most of the time, what I've learned is that most of these men who are perpetrators was molested, and they were molested by women. And so they feel because this happened to them, it is okay for them to do this to somebody else. And most of the time they were molested at the age of 8, 12, and they will not report it to their parents because they want to be seen as macho or something, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So these things trickle down when not dealt with properly. Even at certain institutions where they house vulnerable people, some of them would end up molesting people who are there, right? And then you would realize that this young man was molested by this person at 10, and now he's 16 and he's molesting another boy, you know, because he wasn't he didn't get a chance to heal properly. So we really have to look at um men are also young, our young boys, they're also being abused, and which they grow and become perpetrators.
Okay. One thing I realize that I'm seeing prevalent too is where you find that the gadgets are now becoming our babysitters for our children. And parents tend to just put a gadget in the child's hand and put him in a corner, and they're not monitoring what is happening. And sometimes, and this is from a very young age, because now you are seeing 5 year olds, well, even before five, you're seeing kids like toddlers with phones and watching like YouTube, Pepper Pig, and these sort of things, and then they branch out into other things without being monitored. And the social media platform is where a lot of these pedophiles would find victims, right? And our parents are not monitoring where our children, our very young children, that is, venturing the different areas, the different platforms, or their kids are actually venturing into. They leave the gadgets with them and they have 2 hours. You stay on the phone there for 2 hours. Let me do what I need to get done. And before you know it, that is, these kids are being contacted by strangers for years until they become like reach a certain age where they are able to go out on their own, and they end up going out and meet these said people, have them as friends, they embrace them as friends, and they are molested. And for some reason, there is no sense of linkage between that behavior where we are now embracing social media as a form of picking up the slack of that same relationship that Sister Shelley was just speaking about, the parenting, the family socializing, because everybody now seems to be locked away in some room with their gadget doing whatever they feel like doing. And the socializing is being placed now into these group, the WhatsApp groups and so forth. And even as Sister Linda said, that you have the work WhatsApp group that bullying and harassment is taking place, but also you have the schools platform as well, where these children are actually being bullied and harassed. I could recall recently, could be a couple months back, where we had a case where the teacher, I wouldn't want to, go back, call the name of the school. Uh, some students actually went onto a platform and they saw a teacher just in a particular way. I can't remember the details, but those students end up bullying the teacher based on her behavior, or I can't remember if her behavior or the dress code, something, but it was done on social media, right? And it was brought into the school, and the children were suspended, right? So these platforms, they are not, as Sister Linda said, there are no restrictions that have a way of controlling who is viewing what and so forth. And everybody is exposed to everything. So even your private life is out there. So different professions, yes, you are required to behave a certain way in this on the compound and so forth. But social media now puts you on a different platform where your personal life is out there, and that now is being transformed on your job. Could be at a school, could be as Linda said, the different institutions, the police force, the legal fraternity, healthcare. So all of these different institutions, they have their work platform and they have the different personal platform, and people are looking on these platforms to see how you are behaving, and then you come on the job, and based on what they see out there, you are bullied and harassed and so forth. So it's a very, oh boy, it seems like a heavy discussion when it comes to trying to address the issue, because you have to tackle personal freedom in respect of personals being able to express themselves who they want when they are not on the workplace. So it's very ticklish in respect of the social media aspect of violence. Um, Sister.
Just to add,
Mhm.
that thin line between.
Okay, we
Okay.
have a caller. So let us just try and see if we could get in this caller. Good evening, PSU Speaks. Welcome to the program.
Good afternoon and good night, ladies. I've been listening to you for a while. The last person that just spoke about the way of the social media and so on, I was very
Very
agreeing with
soft.
that.
Okay, caller, give me a minute, please. We are hardly hearing you. Let me try and see if
Okay.
I could get the volume up a little bit.
Or maybe you
Um,
can speak a little bit into the
yes. Okay, just
speak
give
a
us
Right.
a.
You're hearing me now?
Oh
Yes,
yes,
that's
I'm
better.
hearing you better
Okay,
now.
right. The lady who was speaking a while ago about discussing about social medias and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
I am 100% with what you were saying there. But I want to ask something first before I go.
Mm-hmm.
The Marian House and the Peace School. What are they? What are their roles?
The Marian House and the Peace Corps.
Yeah.
Okay, I think Marian House basically offers different services like uh what is services?
counseling. They have counseling, and
Right.
they
Right.
put on programs and so forth for the
Yeah.
vulnerable, the children
Are
at
these
Yeah.
risk.
Some
right?
widows side
Are these
events.
institutions active
Yes, Marian House
administratively?
is, yes.
Yeah, they do
Marian
offer the
House
We
is
had
services.
the
Yeah.
director on some time ago, a couple of weeks ago online.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know a lot used to be put into the Marian House, and we used to have a lot of things coming out there, but I don't really hear much about it anymore. And I think we have lost a lot of parents. And when I speak, I wouldn't say them. I would say we as parents. I mean, I have my children. I have played my role, and I've got my results of my kids. But when I speak, I want to speak and make it. I want it to be known that we are all involved,
Yes.
and we are all involved because it's a role. Because if I see a youngster out there, and I could say something to that youngster to make him to correct him, or let him or her do something that is right. I will. So we all are parents in different areas, and I think we have lost it along because a long time, you used to see a lot of children going to Sunday schools and so forth. I don't see that much again.
Hmm.
I don't see these Sunday school programs as much. They may have some. The community centers where you used to have community activities,
That is
where you
true.
have groups going and having meetings and community activities and meetings with youngsters. We used to have like counseling people going have the talk. We don't. Our children now has just leave and expose as the lady said a while ago. You give them a phone and they go in the area in a corner and they're by themselves. Nobody monitoring them and so forth. But I know of where kids you can give a kid a phone and the parent could program that phone and every time your kid go somewhere do something on that phone, you know. That
Yes.
happens, right?
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
That
Those are,
that
yeah.
setup, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Restrictions.
Because
Yeah.
I have my daughter does that to her daughter. She gives her phone and so forth and whatever she use her phone. If she use that phone to look at something else, she would know because the phone is programmed to her phone.
Right.
And we really
Simple things you
have a
can
lot
do.
to do. We really have a lot to do with the children, with the youngsters of today, because I ask this because I have looked on a Fridays when you pass by outside the Massey store in Annesville a couple Fridays ago. I wanted to take pictures, but I don't find myself doing that. I not person like to pull phone and snap this, snap that. I don't like to do it, but I could talk about it. And the young people, the young girls and boys that I see out there and having drinking alcohol, they're not just
Hmm.
strong. I watch a girl had a quarter rum in her hand and I heard the boy said to her, I go tell the principal and I heard the school he talk. But I'm not going to say the school because it is not going to be good of me to do that. But the youngsters who are there, the behavior and how they are, I think our police system, our police, or the police force who are responsible for
Protect themselves.
peace and justice, I think the police should really and truly, they should have police officers off duty or whoever without uniforms in those areas to see the behavior of those people and really pull back what is happening out there on Fridays in those areas. The loud music in the play in the car park and so forth. If you look now where highway trading is, you notice that they're blocking off they're putting pegs and they're putting an exit in and out that
Okay.
people can't go over there because they go all over there and vandalize with the music, loud drinking, and carrying on. It's to see our young people now. They are just going, and like there's no one to control them. And we
Okay.
need we need to really, you know, have a
Yeah.
system where we can, get back to
Yeah. Pull
our
them back.
youngsters
Yeah.
again, our youth, because the youths are like we are losing it, and a lot of them are not being guided or guided or what from parents. We are just leaving them to do what they want,
Yeah.
and it's real shame to see a lot of our youngsters know what is happening with our crimes and so forth that are happening. Young people is involved, and I mean it's real drastic,
Okay.
real
Thank you.
drastic.
Thank you, caller, for your
So
contribution. Yeah.
I enjoy your
Mm.
program. I'll continue listening because I have my children and grandchildren, and
Yeah.
I would really want the best for them, and I always reach out to them. So it's a
Yes.
wonderful program, and I think more people should really call and share because we all have to work together in order to protect our youth and our youngsters up today. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for your
Thank you
time.
so much. Yes.
Before you go on, I just want to make two comments from the chat. One of our sisters saying social protection systems are desperately needed. That's one. And another of our sisters say, how can they sell them alcohol when in uniforms? Which is true. They should have an age limit for purchasing alcohol. They do, but I don't know
So I
So
just
that's part
wanted
of the
to
problem.
Yeah.
That
And
is part of the problem.
that's the thing too, because in these settings you find a lot of
Mhm.
killings. Well, not killings, but I think we had a couple of cases where we had stabbings and so forth in those areas where you have the school children actually congregating. So we are going to look at now the impacts. We looked at the types of violence. Um, Sister Felicia, yes, was talking about the mental impact it has. So we're going to look at the impact these types of violence have on a woman. You know, how it does it in terms of building self-esteem, as Sister Shellyan
Mhm.
talk about, in terms of depression. These are some of the impacts that violence have on our women and girls that most persons in society probably don't um, dive deeper into the spill off of violence on our women and girls. So just give us your what your thoughts are on the impacts that it have on women and girls.
well,
Anyone?
if I could speak from a certainly an employment perspective, productivity in the workplace is greatly impacted by
Yep.
violence, especially if you are a victim of violence outside of the workplace and you're expected to come into the workplace and just what's the common term? Oh, leave all your issues at the
At the
door.
door.
It's not it's not possible. It's not possible, right?
Yep.
And so a lot of times persons are being then penalized for their lack of performance instead of taking deeper dives into why people are performing the way that they're performing. And if they are experiencing that bullying and harassment within the workplace, and then they are as a result not productive, there there is an inclination to discipline a person for low productivity instead of asking the question, well, what are they being subjected to in the workplace, especially when people have made reports that they're being bullied and harassed and those reports have gone unaddressed because the harasser may be a popular person or the harasser may be a more productive person than a person an employer is less likely to get rid of that person over somebody that they think is not productive. And so the the impact on it means then loss of income.
Right.
And once you start to lose your income and lose your confidence, and then it's a downward spiral.
Yep.
But if you look at what started it all, a lot of times is unaddressed bullying and harassment, or the person is dealing with being victimized outside of the workplace. And sometimes people come into the workplace looking for shelter, looking for help, and
Yep.
instead they find no empathy. Persons just listen, that's none of our business, you're just here to work. And so then we don't become the humans that we are, we just become robots that are expected to get the job done. But I also wanted to say this, right, is that the stats show us that a lot of victimization takes place in the household by persons that the victims know. They're I mean, sometimes we talk about all these strangers on social media. Sometimes victims are only playing off of the result of their victimization. And now they're going out and looking for people, or they're further victimized by people that they trust by telling them how they were victims. And then they think that, okay, this person's going to help me. And that person further re victimizes them.
Mhm.
And it's in the household, it's in the I know I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but it's okay because it's a fact. It's in the churches, right?
Oh,
It's in these organizations that are set up to help. And so when people say things like, We need to get back to how the family was. Listen, there were no reporting back then. People were getting victimized and not reporting it because we grew up, particularly in the black community, is that you got to keep your dirty laundry in your house, right?
Yep.
So I don't want to go back to the way those families are. What we have to not go back to, but what we have to begin to do is accountability and getting people to understand their worth. And when you start to understand your worth, then you start to see for yourself that what is happening to you is not right. And so empowerment, we have to get more around empowerment. And as I said before, we have to get perpetrators to understand that what they're doing was is wrong, and we have to get other persons who look and act like the perpetrators to call them out, because that's how it's going to change. It's not going to change if we as women keep talking about it, because then they say, oh well, all you women do is talk about it. It's going to change when men start to take ownership and teach their young
Yeah.
boys
Mhm.
to change their behavior. That's what has to happen. We need people in leadership, males in leadership, to say, I don't believe in violence against women. That's when it starts to happen. And that's what we need to, as unions, to advocate, even within our own unions. We have 5 women here talking about a topic. We're the men on the 25th talking about the topic. We're the men who say, I don't want to see my daughters to be victims.
Yep.
That's when it changes. And that's when it also changes in the workplace. Because a lot of times that the victims or the perpetrators of sexual harassment in the workplace are 90% men. And that's not to say that it isn't happening the other way around. But we have to be honest about what these stats say. And so when we start holding persons accountable for their behavior in the workplace, then we'll begin to say to really see change. You can't say to me, hey, it's gonna change in the workplace when you change your dress or you change your style or you wear less makeup in the workplace, or if you women get back to being quiet, then things will change. That's not the solution. That's not the solution at all. It's about, if we want real solutions, then we have to call for drastic change. And I think we started out this program talking about it can't just happen on the 25th of November.
No.
Yep.
It can't.
Yep.
I will
And
just want to butt in a bit here in terms of we have to stop further victimizing the victims, because that's how a lot of us were taught growing up. Something happens in the household and you go and complain to your mama or dad, and sometimes because of who the person is, you were beaten. Shut him
Mm-hmm.
up, don't say nothing, what's wrong with you, you
That's not
know?
even too long. I mean, it still happens.
yeah.
Yeah, yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So we have to stop that. And I remember a very long time ago, well, some years back, I remember a coworker who was disciplined for complaining about the boss,
Wow.
what the boss was doing to her, and she was the one who was sent home.
This is the problem. Even when a man abuses a woman, she's the one being removed from the house. Why is she has to be the one who has to go in a safe place? Why don't the police put him somewhere until they sort out the issue or something? Why is she always the victim also to be the one?
Sister Linda spoke about um productivity, and if you're abused and the effect that it would have on you. Now, organizations only concerned about profit,
Most.
and they're gonna look at you as a weak link, that you can't do the job, you can't produce, and they're just gonna move on to the next best person.
Mhm.
And that is an opportunity for us as trade unions to really stand in the gap for those vulnerable persons who will not speak. Because some persons are quiet and they wouldn't say, they would just suffer in silence. So when we do our collective bargaining and so forth, we have to make sure that we include these type of arguments in the document, that persons will not be allowed to treat employees any old how they choose, because they're not gonna empathize with you to say, okay, maybe she really having problems at home. They're not too concerned about that. And how can we help? All they want to talk about is profit and how you're making them lose profit. That's what organization or employers are gonna think about. So you, the employee, and us as trade unions really have to fill the gap to help those persons.
Yeah, that is true. Um, I actually was trying to get some stats on the different types of violence and the percentage in which, well, it is being recorded. And it says here that 77% um, reported violence are physical, right? Followed by 9.76% being sexual, verbal or emotional is 0.14%. This is the recording. This is the reported cases. This is not how many actually
That's just the
happening,
tip of the
right?
iceberg.
Reported cases. And then you have other categories taken up, probably the psychological, financial, and so forth, 13.1%. So as Sister Linda indicated before, the physical assaults, you would see those because those are in front of you, right? But in addition to the physical comes along the psychological and the mental. So these persons who are physically assaulted not only have that to deal with, not the bruises and the trauma of the experience and all of that. They have the psychological aspect, the mental aspect. So they have three things that they are dealing with. And some of these instances, especially for young girls, well, boys too, because we are speaking about gender based, but more so girls than boys, from a young age, when they are raped and these sort of things, and they go through the court system, and some parents would actually, um, it is, we want to use the word barter, or do an exchange for cash, monetary um, um, trade off for what that child, that little girl, that little boy might have experienced, forgetting that that experience is going to affect who they become as young men, young women, adult men, adult women, and how the impact society on a whole. Here too in St. Vincent, when we see our young girls, babies, we have cases where babies, toddlers, before, well, they don't end up before the court because they can't represent themselves. But the physical aspect of what they would have gone through is there. But outside of that, they are offered no kind of support, no counseling. They are just thrown back into society as if they are not going to remember anything. They are too young to remember. I recall having a coworker told me that at age 5, she could recall, now that she's an adult woman, because she didn't know better, that she had an uncle who used to physically abuse her and would give her sweets, would give her money. And to her, she didn't see it as abuse, as she was being molested until she became an adult. And now when she looks back, she say, how could this man be doing this to me? So you rightfully, women and girls are in a situation where they don't know better because they were never educated, or they are just accepting is what accepting what is happening to them as normal, right? So these those things are being carried by a woman and girls and boys throughout their
They're right.
livelihood, throughout their lives. And it's
Mhm.
impacting our society in ways that we can't even understand or try to explain,
Mm.
right? So, educating from, as you say, from the school age, primary school, I don't know if we could go below that. As you say, it starts within our home,
Mhm.
telling kids what is appropriate, what is inappropriate, the different touches, the different parts, explaining to
How
them.
to report
Probably
them.
right. And how to express themselves. Because as Sister Stacy just said, long ago they would tell the little girls who would say, oh, daddy did this to me, my uncle did this. No, 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 don't say that. Stay
Google.
quiet.
It's not.
Right? Stop telling lies on your uncle. Stop telling lies on your father.
It
And they
it
grow
is
up.
not long, and
They grow
it's
up with
it's
that.
still very painful right now because of the amount of cases that we have with those issues. Where mothers would tell the daughters, "You want to mash up me house, or you're gonna make your uncle go jail or your brother go jail."
Right. So they're
So
not
you're
thinking
left
about
with
how it's
this,
affecting that
thinking
young
that
child.
I am going to be the cause of my uncle going to jail. Or she would say, "It's how you always just expose
Yeah,
yourself.
just
That's why
stop
they're
really
gonna look
well.
at you." So it still happens, and it is a problem. And what we have to pay attention to is that the majority of the women, the girls that are abused, are from people who are very close, a very close friend to the mother, the father, the uncle, the cousin. It's always
Yeah.
somebody who is always there around. So it's even make it harder for the person to for the victim to report it or say something. We have we have so many unreported cases because they are threatened. There are people who would tell them, I killed this amount of woman already, so don't call my name. Is this is where I go bury you.
Right.
This
The
it's
threats.
if you go on the streets in the community and you hear the story, it will just mess with your head because when there's not much that you can do and the system can be so messed up, you know but
Mm.
we all have to try to do what we can in our own
And I think,
spaces. This is
sure. And I think that when you start to talk about the effects, then you certainly have to look at the stats around substance abuse, right? And so the sometimes people use substances to numb
Right.
the psychological pain by trying to numb the physical body, but those persons still have to work, and so they're coming into the workplace now carrying maybe what you see as substance abuse, or that's now going to impact
thing that
their employment, their productivity. And and as someone mentioned earlier, employers, they don't have time to figure that out. And so they just see an unproductive person, or they might see a lazy person.
Right.
Or I, when I give my presentations, I talk about we don't know what another person's triggers are. And you come into the workplace, and the workplace has one of those friendly people that think they can hug and kiss everybody.
Mm.
Now
yeah.
they don't know what
Mm,
your triggers are, your triggers are. And then they come and they do something to you that other people might not see as bad, touch you on your back or say, come here, hug you or kiss you on your cheek, and the person has a reaction to it. A lot of times, people in the workplace who are the witnesses say, well, it was no big deal. They were just being friendly to them. See, and they changed the narrative to make it seem like the victim has a problem. But you don't
overreacting, yeah.
know, right? You don't know
Mhm.
what that person is bringing into the workplace. And
Precisely.
that's why,
Mhm.
as unions, we have to be very, very committed to making sure we have proper policies in the workplace around how we interact with each other, right? Nobody should be touched without permission. Let's
Yep.
start there. just because you're a huggy kissy person don't mean you have the right to go around touching everybody else. So it's these type of policies we have to look for in the workplace. And if workplaces don't have those policies, then we have to start to initiate those policies. And a lot of that comes from C190, whether C190 that comes from the UN has been and the ILO have been ratified in your countries, which talks about legislation to put in place protections against violence in the workplace. And so these are the things that we need to turn our attention to. Yes, some things are on education because as someone said earlier, some people actually don't know that what is happening to them is
It's
violent
abuse. Yeah.
because that is all they know. And if they've seen it through their mothers, they've seen it through their grandmothers, when it happens to them, they think this is the norm
Yep. Mhm.
until they get outside and somebody educates them and they realize, oh my goodness, I've been, you know,
Yeah.
I've been molested or I've been hurt or I've been harmed or I've had violence against me for a very long time, right? And also anger management, those things come into the workplace where you have a person that's very angry, and then when you see how they interact with their children, what are they teaching their children? This is how you talk to one another. Those children grow up and come into the workplace, and to ask you to do something simple, they're barking at you, they're angry at you when you don't do it, and you're like, listen, I didn't come to this job to be treated like this. So these are all of the impact of untreated trauma,
Yep.
uh, untreated trauma that carries itself into the workplace.
I just want to add, because I think the point was raised earlier in terms of the vulnerable persons who, not necessarily because they don't know what is happening is wrong, but they're between a rock and a hard place. Because we have a large group of persons that fall in the lower bracket. A lot of them who depend on the handouts, a lot of them who are on public assistance. So maybe the government is guilty of some form of abuse where you're trying to keep people in a certain way in terms of limiting their purchasing power and so forth. So but that is another story by itself. So you might find parents who are mothers, single mothers, because we have a lot of single mothers who are struggling financially. Not that it's an excuse for them to sell their daughters, pretty much so to speak. It's not an excuse. But how are we going to, or how can we, or how should we deal with that? Because these people are struggling financially. And a lot of them are from the low in terms of academics, in terms of finding a job that is going to sustain them and their children. So it has to be a holistic approach, not just the government, to see how we can get these persons more or less to fight for themselves rather than depending on their handouts. And sometimes they think they don't have a choice,
Yep.
that they have to bring somebody in, and bringing somebody into the home mean bringing in a stranger
Yep.
where you have children, and then your children who might be telling you, oh, this is happening, but because you think now, okay, well, if I get rid of this one, who's gonna pay the rent? Who is gonna pay the utility bill? So it's not that they don't know, some of them don't know it's wrong, but they figure that they don't have a choice. How can we help them? How can society, how can government help to change that narrative?
Yep.
Well, the problem, let me just add a little to that. The
Mhm.
problem that we see is that they are addicted, and we don't have a proper rehabilitation system here because you have a lot of people addicted to crack and marijuana, alcohol. But to really put them to rehab and get the help that they really need, it's gonna cost a lot. So you will see people just relapsing, and even though you give them a job, they're going to lose a job because they still had this problem.
Mhm.
And so helping them mean that we have to call out the government to put things in place, have a proper rehabilitation system for these people, because a
And
mental health problem is a real serious issue.
Yeah.
not so much mental health in terms of mental disease, but to be mentally well. Because there's this thin line between you being on the continuum, being whether mentally ill as in having the disease, or mentally well. And I don't think employers understand the importance of you being mentally well. And being mentally well mean that you'll able to, well, you help me and I help you. Because if I am mentally well and I can produce, then you make your profit. If I am not well, and if I am not well, what is in place? Sister Linda keeps stressing policies. Make sure that they have policies. What is in place for you to help me?
Right.
Do you have counselors on board? Do you have people that are readily available? I just want to go to talk with them. How many business places or departments have that? That you just feel that you're not in a mentally well place
Yeah.
today and you just want to go and sit down and talk to somebody. How many of us have access to that?
Yes.
Readily available, whether private or public.
N- n- Not
Okay.
many of us, because some people, it's hard for them to trust and support. So even though the services are there are people who are scared to reach out because they don't want the
And
business
that
on
is
the
the other
road
thing.
and
Yeah.
all.
Because as you said, even looking at the public service where they introduced the EPA program.
Well, they've been trying
Yeah,
to do.
Right. So I must say kudos to, the
yeah.
personnel department for putting in
An
place,
attempt. Yes.
right, that service for employees. And I think what most I heard the concern was is that the reporting, I will not say well, I can't say the reporting structure, but it takes a format where the higher ups in the department is the one who would be recommending the junior staff to go and attend these counseling sessions
How you know I want
and so
counseling?
forth. And one of the concerns was raised where suppose the problem is the person in charge,
You always
the
find that when there's a
supervisor.
customer service
Yeah.
training,
So
send the
yeah,
juniors.
so if the issue is the relationship on the job with the supervisor who is causing the issues, who is overusing their power, their authority to get at the junior staff, right? How do you send that person to get the help that they need?
To
They are
come
the
back to meet
ones.
the problem.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a kind of,
Hmm.
unsettling relationship in the actually getting the persons who really need the help to go and get the help. But we are going to look at more in depth now at the workplace and violence on the workplace itself. And there is a convention, yes, C190, Sister Linda mentioned it. And just to have an idea of an appreciation of what that convention is all about, I would ask Sister Stacy to just give us some brief info as to what that convention really speaks of. This is Stacy. Sister Linda seems to have gotten knocked out.
was
I
gonna
don't.
say that she asked to be let back in.
Yeah, so
So
yes.
yes, the Violence and Harassment Convention is what is called the we also call it the C190. This convention, formerly known as the Violence and Harassment Convention, is a significant international treaty that was adopted by the International Labour Organization on June 21st, 2019. It aims to establish a universal standard for protecting all workers from violence and harassment in the workplace, including gender-based violence. Now, violence and harassment, according to the ILO, defines
that in violence and harassment in the world of work as a range of unacceptable behaviors and practices or threats thereof, whether a single occurrence or repeated, that aim at, result in, or are likely to result in physical, psychological, sexual, or economic harm, and includes gender based violence and harassment. The term gender based violence and harassment is violence and harassment directed at persons because of their sex or gender, or affecting persons of a particular sex or gender disproportionately, and includes sexual harassment. This convention applies to all sectors of workers, whether private or public, formal or informal workers. It protects workers or other persons in the world of work as stated in our national laws, irrespective of their contractual status, persons in training, including interns and apprentices, workers whose employment has been terminated, volunteers, job seekers, job applicants, and individuals exercising the authority, duties, or responsibilities of an employer.
Okay. So we have a convention, and we ourselves here in St. Vincent has written to the government asking them to ratify this particular convention. We have had discussions with the Minister of National Mobilization at the time, that was Mr. Stevenson. That was a couple years back, well, like probably over 5 years ago. We have continued to engage different stakeholders, non-NGOs, and so forth into discussions on C190 and pushing the government to get it ratified and so forth. Sister Linda, from your perspective, right, how could you see this convention, if ratified and if included within our legislation, what kind of protection would it bring to our workers who are like afraid of, like in terms of how do I deal with an issue where I have been violated on the job? How does that convention speak to the issue of violence on the job?
Well, the beauty of the once a country ratifies C-190, and then they begin to move it into a legislative place, then it becomes illegal for that type of behavior to happen in the workplace. And so, with in Bermuda, we have enshrined violence in the workplace into our employment act.
Okay.
And once something is enshrined in an employment act, it's not, it even overrides the policies in the workplace because it becomes illegal. And employers can be held accountable financially. And oftentimes, when you start to attack a person's finances, then they start to take things more seriously, right? And
Yes, of
so
course.
it it is a process, but it's a build-up of introducing it by unions into the work environment.
Yes,
And it
collective
has to be
agreements.
continuous, 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 continuous. So what it then does is it backs up policies, it backs up collective bargaining agreements, right? And and that heightened awareness starts to make employers say, okay, we can really be held accountable for that. But I often say, you don't want people doing it because they have to. You want employers doing it because it's the right thing to do. Persons that come to the workplace should be protected. You're coming to do a task. That's what work is. Work is only a bunch of tasks. So why should you come to a place where you're doing tasks and getting paid and then be subjected to violence and harassment? And we really have to keep it that simple. And we
Yeah.
start with simple policies, simple approaches to get employers to understand that they have an obligation to protect their staff.
Yes. And I saw recently that the OSH part of it is being pushed, even though you cannot get the convention ratified, as you just stated, the Protection of Employment Act in our collective agreements. And I also see they are pushing the OSH part of it, which speaks to the work, the spaces, the proper, even if you have to put up cameras, lighting, these sort of things, because we would have. I think we. I can't. I don't want to be misinforming anybody. But sometimes when you visit some of these workplaces, the kind of dark areas that are prone to, for people being violated or being exposed to violent encounters, those things could be addressed in the OSH Act, where it speaks to proper lighting and so forth, cameras in certain areas, and all of these little things that we can do to protect our workers on the job. So the C-190, as you said, it might be the extent to which it involves not just the government and the employers, but I think it has an area where it speaks to the private sector as well coming on board. So to have everybody embrace it all at once might be a challenge for most persons, most governments, which I think might be given the reluctance for them to actually sign on to it so readily. But we, as you said, as trade unions, we could definitely look at where we could start like implementing aspect of it into those agreements and so forth, to actually get the ball rolling in protecting our workers on the job in that sense. Um,
My good friend, Hanif Benjamin, talks about sometimes you have to, when you're speaking with persons, you have to understand your audience, right? And employers, business owners understand profit. And we have to help them to understand that if persons cannot operate at their best in the work environment, that will eventually impact your profit, because it means less time that they're going to spend at work. And the more time you're out of work, the more it's a liability to the employer. So you have an obligation to create environments where people can be their most productive. And so when we talk about employers may not be inclined to buy into it,
we have to
you
support.
will buy into something that's going to help your profit.
Right.
Right? And so
I see.
it's about the approach, it's about the understanding, and it's about being collaborative. It's not an us and them, it's a we.
Yes.
We want successful businesses, because successful businesses are able to pay workers fair wages. Failing businesses can't do that. So it's really a win-win, the environment that you create for your workers.
Definitely. So I see we are almost coming to the top of the hour. But before the time runs out on us, we have identified types of violence and the impacts, and we have also spoken about some ways in which we can, as unions and as persons in society, some ways that we can actually try, not we can, okay, might not say eliminate it immediately, but try to just repress what is happening. And we said through education and through getting the involvement of our male counterparts, right? We also look at our laws and how it addresses the issue of violence against our women and girls. Are our laws really offering the protection that a woman and girl really needs to feel safe, that they could go before the court and feel that they justice have been solved? How do we view our laws in respect of ensuring that our women and girls feel safe, that they are being like getting justice? Because in St. Vincent we have the Domestic Violence Act, I believe. Right,
Yes.
Domestic Violence Act, which I think they revised in 2015, and they also have the Civil Action. Oh no, well, yeah, the Domestic Violence Act. That's all we have, and the Criminal Code, which is more like for serious offences like the rape and incest. Right, so the Criminal Code actually covers those areas. So, how do we feel about our laws? Are they really set up to protect our women and girls? And I know the National Mobilization would have a procedure that they have built in with the police that women and girls would actually go through in getting some guidance into how to address that issue when they are been violated. So I think Stacey would have some information in respect of what the national mobilization does in respect of addressing issues brought to them by the police.
Okay. Matters referred to by the police. Well, first of all, in relation to the police, if a matter is taken to the police, just give me a minute. Let me just. Yes, sorry. The national mobilization, they have referrals from the police. They also have referrals from the family court, churches, schools, and so forth. A matter from the police, it will normally, first of all, if there's a report to the police, they will normally say it was this in terms of domestic violence. They would give have a form which they give to the victim. The victim would have to seek a medical officer. Sorry, sister. Sister Linda
Okay,
needs
I'm
to
seeing. I'm
that.
gonna
Yes,
try this
yes.
method. Good.
Yeah, so a medical officer, so the victim will go to the to seek the assistance of a medical officer who will fill out this form, and the form is taken back to the police where they would take a statement. But before moving forward, one of the questions they said they would ask is if the persons want to pursue the matter. And you know where that may lie for some persons. They I know in terms of mobilization itself, they have a lot of services that they're offering. In terms of for female, the male, community based. They have training programs. I was also told they have support groups. In terms of one of the procedures that is done, an assessment is determined to measure the level of risk. So depending on how high risk it is, they will remove the person from the home directly, immediately. That's depending on the risk. But some
How do that is forming?
yeah, they say they also visit the homes. A home
What
visit is
happens
also
when it?
done to get a true picture of the situation. And as I just said, the persons at high risk will be removed immediately. But in terms, they have a safe space that the persons can go to. But in terms of that, though, it's on a short-term basis.
That's the problem.
Uh,
So what
Sustainability is
that's
the
that's
problem.
too much. That's too much. That thus doesn't encourage nobody to report anything.
It's on a short-term
Okay.
basis, so where do you go from there? But I see that they are trying, but I see also that there's so much more to be done, because that person should not be allowed to even go
Go through
back
all of that.
and go back into that situation. Because if it's a short term, let us say this person is not working, but I guess they give assistance in terms of finances.
But short term, all of them is short term.
Yeah, and when you say the level, depends on the level of risk.
Yeah. Say if it's a high risk, they will remove that person immediately from the
How
home.
do they
But then,
determine it?
So if it's low
how
risk, you
to,
go back
You
and
don't
wait
know
for it to
what's
come
in the
high risk.
person's head. You just don't. I'm like, hmm.
Baby love, yeah.
how do you determine how high a risk to remove somebody from the home?
Right.
But
So
I
when
guess it
it's low
depends on
risk
what
according to the
form of
assessment, they
abuse it
send you back
is.
until it's high risk and they come back to them.
Yeah, because
They also offer like financial assistance. They offer training, skills training as well, so persons can be empowered to probably start their own business or find jobs. Be
You know,
marketable.
I
it is
think
sad.
I think I I think the problem is this system and people don't
I
have that
don't.
faith in this system in terms of sustaining what they started. Because I don't agree with no risk and categorize risk and who's to remove
Yeah,
no however. The person was abused or the person was
that's
exposed to
it.
some sort of violence and they
and they
came to
want
you
out. They want
and they
out.
came to you for assistance. So, and the
That's it.
system has been like that for quite some
That's
time in terms of this short term help that they
Yeah,
can give you. And then the court system, it takes so long. So, by the time your case come around, you want to forget and you
yeah,
ask now to remember what you're trying to forget.
you're right.
So, is the system is the issue where persons think, well, okay, it don't make no sense to. You have to go through so much red tape. You're suffering.
I,
You have issues, you have been abused, and you have to
I
go through so
yeah.
much before you get there. So,
I don't even like to comment on these issues because I just get calls, I just get messages saying I shouldn't say this and that. So I just do move
and
by to
that's
do.
it. That's one of our problems.
But the truth is the truth. The reality is the reality.
I be carrying we take women to the police station. We follow them through the whole process, and we make the departments who's supposed to help them. If they can't help them, we do our best to. But it is sad because everybody has an excuse as to why this ain't working. And it's not me, it's that person there, it's that person, it's that person there. So the NGOs, the charity organization, they are left to try to do what they
Really
can do.
ask. Yeah.
Yeah, to do what we can do with little or no money. It is sad.
Okay. So, Linda, from your Bermudian viewpoint, how is this dealt with in terms of your laws? How do it protect women and girls?
I think that
It's
all countries suffer from the red tape bureaucracy, right? It's just it.
Sorry.
And today we were in this round table talking about how we can improve this process, because you can't have a system in place that further victimizes you,
Hmm.
right? And I think it really has to be women's voices at the table when these systems are created and put in place, right? Because they will understand what it's like to go through further trauma from lived experiences.
okay.
And I think that we have persons at the table in decision making positions now who are prepared to make some changes. And that is where the advocacy of unions come in. That is where you advocate for workers and people on a global or a more national basis, not just your own members. A lot of times, and this is a fact. Many people will argue it, but it is a fact. Many of the protections that we have, many of the benefits we have for workers in workplaces came directly as a result of advocacy by unions.
Yep.
No employers just woke up one day and decided to be generous, right? It came from the advocacy and pressure of unions. So this is another step that we must pursue and pressure in order to have protections in place for our workers, but also streamline processes that make you encouraged to report, because we had the same problems around our bullying and harassment procedures, to where we then challenged our bargaining units to review these procedures so that a person who's a victim of violence don't feel further victimized by just going through the process. In fact, in the room today, one lady said that he or she had been sexually assaulted, and then
Mhm.
when she came out to have to report that process, everybody that was in the room looked like the perpetrators. And so these simple things and these simple adjustments occur when you actually listen to victims. And victims sometimes are not able to have their voices at these tables. And that's where organizations like unions play a role in speaking for those persons that have been victimized. And it's in every country. This is one of those global crises that every country is dealing with. However, there are countries who have got it right. And that's where research comes in. And that's where we have to look at those countries that have got it right, that have less numbers of violence against women and girls. We have to say, how did they do it? And then we have to be brave enough to bring such programs into our own countries. But it is not something that we can continue to talk about one day a year.
Yep.
It can't happen.
Definitely.
I like the fact that Sister Linda said that more women are sitting at the table now, but sometimes women are sitting at the table and they're the one making the policies to further violate other women, because they were never part of the abuse population, and then they don't know. So they make these policies and rules and regulations that further violate who
Hmm.
Yeah.
the person
Yeah, I
who's violated already.
say that
And
all the
that
Well,
is the sad part.
well,
right.
my question,
Yeah.
my response to that, sister, and I must respond in this way. Just because there are more women at the table, don't mean that those women at the table are the decision makers,
Well, that's true.
right? And so,
That's
because
true.
sometimes women are at the table because you have policies in place that say you must have
You
so
must
many
sit
women
there.
at the
You
table.
Right,
don't say
right,
anything.
right. And
But the
also,
real decision makers may not
And
be
again,
may not be.
true,
Yeah.
true. I agree.
say that we have a lot more women in St. Vincent in high position, but at what positions?
Yeah,
You
well,
know, like press
the top
secretaries.
positions are still being held by the men.
Why
That's
the
the thing,
Yeah.
you would have
people
hoped
that make the
that
real decision.
more women are in
Yeah.
parliament, in cabinet, and they would be able to bring these policies and really lobby for greater
They,
investments when they're doing budget.
they
What is it?
still don't have
What
the
is
say.
it?
Yeah.
So
They still don't
so
have.
while we're making progress, we're really not making any progress.
Right.
For sure.
Okay. Unfortunately, sisters, we are beyond the top of the hour. It was indeed a pleasure, engaging with you guys tonight. I wish we've had another hour to go. But time is against us. So I would probably we could get to probably just a few minutes to just closing remarks, whatever you all want to say just to top off the discussion before we leave tonight? Anything from you, Sister Linda? We start with you, our guest,
Sure.
leader.
Well, my I think that we need to have radical changes, and part of those radical changes is accountability for the perpetrators, but also violence takes place 365 days. And it can't be just one day. It must be a continuum, and it must be honest conversation in our small, quiet places when we get together. That if everybody is talking about it, then we will create such a noise that persons can't help but make changes.
Definitely. Okay, Sister Felicia.
Yeah, I want to reiterate that violence is not just my problem or the victim's problem. It is everyone's
Everybody's
problems, and
problem. Yes.
we yeah we really have to pay attention to the people who are near us, around us, and try our best to educate the youth. That's how we could make change.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
Sister Ross or Sister Stacy, I don't know which one of you wanna go
I'll
next.
go since
Okay,
Sister
go
Ross
ahead,
is in
sister.
studio.
Go
I just
ahead.
want to say that let us stop for the victimizing of the victims. Let us really sit down and pay attention to what they are saying and see how best we can assist. Um, I will say let the change start with us. If you can speak, I borrow this quote from Rob Brown. If you can speak, you can influence. If you can influence, you can change lives. So
Okay.
I just wanna let us start with us, ourselves, and let us encourage others to do the same. Also, I would like to just remind persons that our women's retreat is on Saturday. I hope
Definitely.
all registration forms are in, and it's supposed to be a grand time. Let us just come and enjoy. It will be it's a safe space for all and free to speak freely and just enjoy the day without, and we try and take care of our mental health as well.
I wish
Thank
I
you.
could attend.
And Sister Alexander Ross.
Just to sum up, violence is not anything new, or violence and harassment. More so, we've been focusing on it in the workplace as trade unions, but it's everywhere. And it's high time that there's no excuse not to say something. If there is something and you need to say, as Sister Linda said, make some noise. And if we all speaking the same language, singing from the same song sheet, then we can make a difference. We as a union will continue to push, especially for the ratification of C-190. We will not stop until the government decides to ratify that convention. But let us all remember to be one another's keeper. It's not about us, and it doesn't operate in a bubble. It's a domino effect, and one thing affects the other until all society is affected. So just keep that in mind when we think about violence and harassment, and when one of your colleagues is affected, just think about the wider picture and not so much in a bubble.
Okay, so thank you, sisters, for those words of wisdom. And thank you, Sister Linda and Sister Felicia, for being on the program. It was indeed a pleasure having you.
Well, Sister Linda, you
And
can come for the retreat on Saturday.
and we would of course engage you and on these in these discussions not too far in the future. So I mean, keep an open ear to us, and you know
Mhm.
and embrace the calling when it comes. Okay. So, listeners, once again, thank you for listening to another PSU Speaks program. And of course, as Sister Stacy indicated, Saturday we have our women's retreat in recognition of International Day to End Violence Against Women and Girls. It would be indeed an empowering session where you would come, and, as Sister Linda said, you're in a safe space, that you would even be encouraging and getting that mental health aspect of our persona just, So I don't think registrations close. Are we giving it till Wednesday? Okay. Okay, so then we would have to put out something if we are extending the registration. So once again, ladies, thank you so much for, engaging us, and
Thank
have
you.
a good night.
Peace out, sister.
The protection of workers' rights is critical to the development of any country. Workers are the driving force behind any economy. The Public Service Union presents PSU Speaks and